I'm ready to have some fun and get a little messy in my art journal. Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I'm excited to do some art journaling. I'm going to jump back into this book back here for my art journal. This year I've been using the 49 and Market Memory journals, and I've very much enjoyed it. So we're going to create a spread on this page right here. I have some of my favorite colors picked out in some acrylic paints and some gorgeous gilding polish that I think is going to be fun to use as well, that I'm excited to give a try. So I will put you guys on fast forward. We're just going to get messy. We're going to have fun. Let's go. Texture is one of my favorite things to play with when it comes to art journaling and playing with mixed media. And there's lots of different ways to add texture to your mixed media pieces, to your art journal entries. And I'm starting out this one with working in the background. So you can add pieces to the background of your pages before you start adding color or paint or spray, whatever the case may be. Adding these pieces onto the background so that bits and pieces start peeking through is what adds that depth and texture to your page. And sometimes it's hard to envision it in advance. And there were certainly times during this particular art journal process where I felt like perhaps I was going a bit crazy, that it wasn't coming together, because my vision for what it was going to be had to do with building upon layer. And until you keep working with those layers, it doesn't really all start coming together. So the middle process is rough and ugly, and the ending process is something that you can really enjoy. So I'm starting with a few different things. I have some book pages from old books. I have an old sewing pattern. And again, this is all just to go in the background. I have plans to add color on top of this. So this is using collage to start building the texture on this page. I'm just going to trim off this page that is hanging over the edge, and that's going to be the first layer that we're going to start building on top of from here on out. The next thing that I'm going to add to change up the texture of this page is clear gesso. Now, clear gesso is often used to prep a page, to kind of seal it. People often use it in Bible journaling to prep a page so that mixed media elements don't go through the paper. However, if you put gesso on in a thin manner with a few little ridges, meaning I'm not being perfect getting it on, it's not perfectly smooth, I'm wanting it to just adhere to parts of the page, then when I apply wet mediums on top of this, the texture is going to start coming through. The texture of the gesso will show up as I add paint on top. And I love using this technique because it looks like almost a whitewash texture. It just looks a little bit messy, and I'm kind of here for that. All right, here's element number 3 that I'm trying out with texture. This would be texture paste. And of course, it's in the name. It is made to automatically add texture to your pages. You can use it in a few different ways. You can just scrape it directly onto the background of your page and then paint over the top of it. You can mix wet mediums in with it and then scrape that color. It then effectively dyes the texture paste a color. Then you can work with that. I'm scraping it through a stencil. The stencil is from the Crafters Workshop. I'm scraping it very thinly through the stencil. So you're going to have these leaves kind of falling in the background. Of course, we're getting into fall here. So I wanted to kind of celebrate that moment. And I plan to paint over these. These are not going to be super prominent elements in my art journaling page, but this is a little bit raised. So here's what happens. Texture paste holds its shape. So you scrape it thinly, but when you scrape it through a stencil, you're going to have it, it's just a tiniest bit raised off the page, a little bit of dimension, which is where the texture element comes from. A few things about texture paste, it does dry really fast. So you want to make sure to close up your texture paste jar when you're not using it because it will dry out super fast. So once I'm done here, you'll see me go ahead and put it away right away. You also want to wash your tools. So the spatula, the stencil, things like that, wash it in warm water immediately so that it doesn't dry super hard, because that's the deal with texture paste. It does dry pretty hard, pretty rigid. All right, I put this to the side, let it all dry, and now I'm going to start adding paint. I am working with acrylic paint, but because this particular acrylic paint from Dina Wakley was a little bit thick, I ended up adding water to it, watering it down. I did that for a couple reasons. I did want it to blend just a little bit with some of the other colors I had going on the page, and I wanted it to not be so opaque. I was going for a translucent look because I wanted to be able to see those elements that I had going on in the background. I wanted some of the book pages to come through. I wanted to see a little bit of the sewing pattern. And I wanted the colors to mix. That's what I'm working on here. Now, this again, you always hit those points, I feel like, in every art journal process that I work on, where you're like, what am I thinking? And somewhere in the midst of mixing these colors and putting them in blocks kind of around the page, that's where I started to go, this is not exactly how I envisioned. I kind of envisioned the colors blending a little bit more. I should have and could have used more water to make that happen. I'm going to do something else to help blend the colors just a little bit more in a bit. But the point is that I kept going, especially because I knew the texture was what I was going for. So I was just going to keep leaning into that until it looked how I liked it to look like. And you can just keep adding and going. And that's one of the beauties of art journaling. You don't ever really have to be done. You can just keep building and building. So you can kind of see some of the texture paste leaves coming through. Not a whole lot. They're blending ever so slightly. They're soaking in the paint that I'm putting on top. However, I have another plan for making sure that those pop just a little bit more. You can see I'm bringing in some more water, working on the blending of some of the colors. I'm liking it more and more the more I blend. Once I finish the blending here, I am going to let this dry completely. All right, now I'm pulling out, once this dries completely, I'm pulling out this gilding paste. I haven't used this a lot. It kind of reminds me of mousse, and a little goes a long way. I put too much on right here at the beginning on this sponge, and you can very gently scrape this over the top of raised portions, like where the leaves are, and it's going to catch on those portions and make them pop just a little bit more. A little too much in that area, but much lighter down here really made the leaf start popping. This area I'm gonna have to just deal with separately. I got a little too heavy-handed. Just little bits and pieces. Gilding is probably the key word here, just to add a little bit of shine, a little bit of shimmer. I am actually bringing it to some other parts of the page, mostly just to balance out the heavy-handedness up at the top. But I'm just gonna bring that light purple into a few of the leaves, and then I'm going to switch it out for that deeper kind of turquoise jade color and bring that into the leaves as well. I also learned as I was doing this that I could almost blend the two colors. So after I fill in some of the leaves with the darker color to make them pop, I also bring it very gently over the lavender color, and I like how they mix. It was fun to play with. This is a mixed media medium that I have not used very often. I can see that it would have some cool purposes, especially in card making and in some journaling. I think it's something that you would have to play with to really start understanding how you like to use it and how it is best used. So that's definitely something I'm going to need to experiment with a little bit more in the future. At this point, the blending is getting much better, but there's still some harsh lines that I'm not liking. So we're going to play with texture again. I have white acrylic paint that I am also watering down, and I'm going to use my little paper towel. Don't forget to use other elements in your craft room, packaging, paper towels, different bits and pieces that you can use to add texture. And just by dabbing the paint on in a few spots, it's going to soften the overall look, adds another element of texture as opposed to just painting it on or spraying it on. This is going to be a different look, and I actually really like how that came together in the end. I think it helped to soften some of those edges. I think it helped to bring out some of the textured leaves. And again, those leaves are going to be subtle. That's the whole thing. I did not want any of that texture to jump out. It was subtle changes in the background that I was building off of for the page. All right, so now we've got the background. I'm loving it. We got it at a focal point. So I have a couple of ephemera pieces here, some old typewriters from way back in the day when I used to use By the Well for God. And I'm pulling out a few of those. I knew the quote I wanted to add already. So really the typewriters and the stars are just a way to bring attention over to the area where I wanted to add the quote. And the quote that I chose was this: she thought about all those times she doubted herself and decided she wasn't going to waste her precious time again with that nonsense. Give me an inspirational quote any and every day, and I love them. And I love art journaling as a way to collect beautiful words and beautiful quotes that inspire me. All right, I also decided to go ahead and trace around my stars right here just to make them pop a little bit more so that they would stand out from the background since they were in that same color scheme. Once I have those on the page, then I do go ahead and add my quote there at the bottom. There are several ways you can add quotes. I do often prefer my own handwriting just because I think it's nice to have those elements. I did find this quote personally very motivational. So I think it meant a lot that it was in my handwriting. Once that's on, I did decide to add a few little plus sign art marks kind of scattered around the page, and that is going to be it for this experiment in texture. I am very pleased with how it came out. I'd love to hear what you think down below, and if you have any ideas for how to share or add texture to your art journal page, please feel free to share those in the comments as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button. As always, I will link all of the supplies that I use down in the description box below, so be sure to check those out if you are interested. I do want to give a huge shout out to my entire Patreon community. Thank you all so much for your continued support. We have a ton of extra content, great perks, lots available over on Patreon, including in the free tier. There is something for everyone. So if you're interested, head on over to patreon.com/ScrappyWife and find out more. All right. I hope that you have a fabulous day. And as always, keep it creative.